Hola humanos, welcome to our ipsicafé scoping series where we take an idea and scope it live in real time, 1 hour at a time. My name is Alejandra, I'm a strategist and community organizer, and
I'm Lizzie, a project strategist and a systems thinker.
the first idea we are scoping under this series is we are wanting to create a blueprint that allows us to intentionally build and interweave our networks so we can strengthen our communities and more effectively translate people power into structural change-making power. And then Lizzie will give us a quick recap of what we've done in the previous 5 sessions so far.
Yes, thank you. So based on the purpose and seeing the project as a system, we started with a general brainstorming with the bubbles method that we use. This is a free flow of ideas, and the goal is to bring all these elements to the surface and the elements that we think are part of the system. Each bubble represents an element, an idea. To help us with the brainstorming process, we use the 5WH framework to ask us questions: what, who, where, when, why, and how. More questions, more ideas. After we thought that we had captured all the elements that came to mind, we completed a categorization process, and this was to group all the bubbles or all the elements based on certain common characteristics. And we ended up grouping all the ideas in 6 categories. Humans is yellow, areas of interest green, core values foundation purple, blueprint development, which is the development of this project, orange, blueprint output, which will be the project's results, blue, and the barriers to the system, gray. Once that we have everything categorized, we started the interconnection of the system elements, because this is critical part of systems thinking. Everything has to be interdependent or interconnected. And then we have done so far interconnections between the blueprint development, the humans, the areas of interest, and blueprint outputs. And this doesn't mean that it is a sequence or linear way. We are going to see how many elements could connect to many other elements without not necessarily within their own color. As we realized that the blueprint outputs, blue, had too many elements, we found important to segregate a little more. For example, if we have a drawer for clothing, we can have pants, bottoms, socks, underwear there. But if we have too much clothes, you probably want to have a drawers for tops, drawers for buttons, drawers for underwear, and this is still under the same category. So that's what we did. And we left last session discussing the idea that the green big bubble with shared realities can be a blue one too. And we will talk a little bit more today about that. So this will help someone or some groups to identify themselves to start the blueprint application. And in the following weeks, and today, we will continue building what we have done.
Thank you, Lizzie. So without anything else, let's continue and get to scoping. So as we always do, I will note the time that we're starting at the top. That really helps keep track accurately of how long this process takes and the details of our progress. So it's May 11th, and local time is 11:04 in the morning. All right, so if we're looking at, we're doing connections now. We're going to continue our connections, and we connected most of the blue category last time. We have a couple floating on the right. We have 2 blue and an orange that are floating. That is not really a problem. By the end of this process, we want to make sure that every element is connected in some way, because everything in a system, as Lizzie was saying, has to be interconnected. So it doesn't mean that everything needs to be connected sequentially and in order. It just means that we have to keep an eye out for the elements that have not been connected, so we can make sure that they are connected once we are done with the process. We're also going to bring in the gray and the purple categories that we haven't connected yet, and see where that takes us. So I'm going to bring those in. And yeah, maybe it'll be good to have a bit of a refresher on what we were doing last time, in order to, I'm going to put these here.
Yeah, and despite that we start with one color or one category and we start mapping them between themselves, we can also definitely, because this continues being a free flow of ideas, right? So we can say, oh, I know that this orange connects to this blue or this green, so we can connect it right away, so we don't lose track of it. Because sometimes the brain, just want to go on their own, and I want to think something different and instead of in a structure. So it has a structure, but we want to ensure that we have flexibility to move around. And that's what you can see. You will see how we could go from one color to another, even if we haven't finished all the elements of one of the first color. Let's say the blue, we haven't finished, but we may be connecting now with purple because we find clear path in that linkage.
I'm putting all these, I'm going to put them on the left, all the ones that we have floating, just so we can be able to see them clearly.
And don't get stuck if you find something that you don't know where to connect. Leave it there, like the saying, sleep on it. We can continue something and then we can come back. And sometimes we find something that was completely different to our first thought.
Yeah, categories are not meant to be, one of the hardest parts of this process, at least for me initially, was to not get too caught up on the specific categories. They don't have to be perfect from the beginning. It's just a way to break down information so you can process it with just smaller bits at a time. It's very difficult to process all of these elements at the same time, so the categories help to do it in small parts. And as Lucy said, through this process, one can see that, oh, this element really goes in this category, or this element can go in 3 different categories, and that it is through this analysis and processing of information that all those things come to light. So what are you thinking, Lizzie?
I'm trying to zoom in. So maybe we want to talk about a little bit why we have all these blue bubbles within one bubble.
Which ones?
The group dynamics, communication cadence.
So here in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the way we were thinking about, so the blue category is essentially what is going to come out of this process. We want to create a blueprint. So this blue elements are trying to encompass the process of essentially applying this blueprint, like what the process would be if one were to use this blueprint, this tool. And we have, within the blue category, we start with some sort of shared reality. There is a reason through which a group is organizing, or one person wants to organize. And that's why we have it connected from the green bubble at the top right, because those are various reasons people gather and people group themselves for these various reasons. And those are just examples. There may be, there's lots of others. So that is kind of the start of why this blueprint might get applied. Just as a reminder, the blueprint is meant to be a way to build and interweave our networks. So it might be a way to build a new community around a shared reality, or it might be a way to interweave existing networks around that shared reality. So it might be that a group already exists that is gathered or organized around an identity or a reality, a shared reality for some reason. But in order to translate that power on a smaller scale into a larger scale, it helps to interweave with other groups that might have that same shared reality or shared motivations. From there, it would be, we talked about being necessary to explore the existing systems, structures, and institutions under which this group exists, because the way we interact and exist in the world is very much not just affected by our intrinsic abilities and motivations, but also the external structures that we exist under. And through that, we also identify some needs as well that this group might have. Why is this group organizing? What is it that it's trying to achieve? Then if we move along from left to right along the blue, one thing that's helpful is identifying what other people have done. It is not necessary to reinvent the wheel every time we're trying to organize or trying to achieve something. In fact, that is a very ineffective way to go about doing this. So looking at, once you have identified what structures this group is existing under, what the shared reality is, what the needs are of the group, then you can look at other people within your community or in other communities, locally, regionally, globally, and see what they have done to affect change around something similar, and what methods they may have applied in the process. And all of this can contribute to getting more buy-in, whether it's from that initial process, people who have that shared reality, or like I mentioned, whether it is as you're trying to interweave networks, how you get buy-in from other groups in order to work together toward that shared goal. And that brings us to this middle blue bubble that is gathering lots of smaller blue bubbles. And that is things that need to be, I think, considered as you're trying to bring different individuals together, different groups together. There are different considerations that need to be made in order to be able to effectively organize. So the group dynamics that exist, what communication styles might be present, what formats of interaction could be helpful. It might be that you're organizing in your community and physical in-person interaction is possible, but it also might be that you're organizing around a shared reality globally. So a virtual form of interaction might be more realistic because there's people in different time zones and different countries. And that all needs to be considered in order to define the organization and the structure of this organized group. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I would like to bring here something that it is very important within a system. Everything has to be linked, unless there is a start of the system or the end. If we have something that is not connected at the beginning or at the end, is either because if it's a product, if it's at the end, but it most likely is because it's missing a connection. So if you see there, for example, identification of needs in the blue category, it has two entrances, like we are going to have what existing systems and structures and institutions are there, and that shared reality and shared motivations, and then we are going to identify the needs. But what do I do with that identification of needs? That identification of needs informs something. So we have to have a connection between identification of needs and something there that probably is the buy-in or the, or back to the blueprint application to, but this is something that is wonderful.
Do you think back to what others have done, or maybe the buy-in?
It could be both. It could be both. To see if we have a need, we could go and find out what others have done when they have that need as well.
Well, I was thinking of making this the connection between identification of needs and existing systems and structures as bidirectional.
Perfect.
Because then that connects. So then it doesn't go one way, but it can be that you identify from the start of the blueprint application, you might go to identify some needs, and then that can inform a better analysis of those existing systems and structures that impact the group in some way.
Right. And the beauty of seeing any project as a system and using a systems thinking perspective allows you to find the gaps. And that's when we didn't think about this. Oh, we didn't think about that. Oh, we missed this. And this is when we don't have a complete analysis of all the interdependencies, and that's what is critical. I mean, this is very, very important when we are defining the scope and the planning of any project that we want to pursue. So we saw a gap there. Oh, what is missing? And of course, we are doing this like in weekly basis, but these are eye openers, like make us immediately go back and say, what is missing here? Thank you.
Of course. Okay, so maybe it would be helpful to have a title for this, like group analysis, or maybe group dynamics itself can be the all-encompassing bubble,
yeah, because
right?
Everything that you have there will give you the dynamics of the group.
Yeah, so maybe I'm gonna do that.
And this particular change tells you how flexible this process is, right? You have it initially as if it was one element, but then we say, oh, really, group dynamics is a group of elements. It's a subgroup of elements. And these are the things that we mentioned, that I mentioned in the recap, that we may want to give now different shades of blue. And then we have the star blueprint application, and maybe all the part of the existing systems and what others have done that we have on the left. Maybe we have it like a light blue, and this one that Alejandra is working right now, the group dynamics, is the second group of categories. I don't know, medium blue or royal blue. So this is the flexibility of the process. Do not get stuck on what you have done. Just continue building and improving or evolving as you go.
And one thing that I like to consider and discuss at this point when we're going through this information is the idea of divergence and convergence. So when we started with the brainstorm part, it was a process of divergence. We were going very wide and grabbing as much as we could. And then once we categorize, that is the process of convergence. So now we're trying to determine a small group of what all of this information falls into. But once we have the categories, I think it's helpful to return to a process of divergence. So within each category, it's possible to, because we identified some elements that are part of group dynamics, but now that we have that sort of title category, it's helpful to go back and, okay, what other aspects of group dynamics do we need to consider? We're not necessarily going to go into that right now, but that is part of this process of the back and forth. It's not a linear process. Even after categorizing and connecting, there might still be identification of elements that come through in this process. It's not that we're done brainstorming or we're done categorizing. It all continues in a non-linear sort of fashion. So I think right now we have under group dynamics, we have communication styles, communication cadence. I'm wondering if communication cadence would go
on the right. And the right at that bubble that is not a bubble yet, but that's sort of the processes that we will need, or
like organizing logistics or something
right,
like that.
We can call it logistic or operations, if you will. So because in that operations we need to have like processes right there. We have to have processes. We are going to define tools. We are going to have what is the skills bank that we have, communication channels, communication cadence. That will be our operating rhythm. and all the definitions of the process and the project, because when we have shared definitions and everybody knows that blue is blue or a house is a house, and we determine what is the size of the house, everybody knows, okay, when we mention a house, everybody knows what it is. Sometimes when we don't define or we don't pay attention or we don't put the little time to make sure definitions, a house could be a two-story building for somebody and another could be just a flat small room. So we really need to have shared definitions in our processes. So and maybe now that I'm seeing that these are like bigger groups of blue, maybe we don't need to break them in another color. We can keep them under the blue, but you know, they are now, we are seeing like a segregation. We have like 3 bubbles right now with some of their, like, they are not bubbled, the ones of the existing systems, but those we can see that they are grouped or subgrouped under the blue.
And the left part, at least like existing systems, identification of needs, what others have done, similar methods, those can be grouped as an example into kind of a contextual analysis.
Perfect.
Right?
Yep.
So we don't necessarily have to do that, but the idea is that that's part of what's happening. So there's this start with a blueprint application that recognizes a shared something, shared reality, shared motivation, shared identity, whatever it might be. And then you have to do a contextual analysis of, okay, what are we gathering under and what are we gathering for? Once you have the buy-in, we see that as right now, it's the only bubble that is feeding into the group dynamics. So once you have the buy-in of the group that you're looking to organize, then you need to look at what are the dynamics of this newly formed group or existing group. And then, I don't know if this is too simple, but obviously I think that would connect.
Right. And I think that's a great example of how things happen here. So if you just draw like a light bubble that could be kind of vertical on the contextual analysis, we don't need to, but just to have an explanation here. So Alejandra mentioned this would be a contextual analysis, all these elements that will, but there are interconnections in that contextual analysis because each of the elements there will inform another. However, in the group logistics operations, maybe we don't need to have that linkage between communication channels and communication cadence. Maybe yes, because okay, if we have what is the channels, what are the cadence, what are the people, depending on the communication, on the time zones or where the people are, they will be linked. But if they are processes, you can be building the processes according to the people that you have. So the group logistics operations, they don't need to be linked internally necessarily. You could, if you feel like, yeah, you have maybe some timeline that you have to follow, and then you want to have the communication channels and cadence first, because depending on the resources, and then you will build the processes and the tools and database later. So you can have that linkage, but that would be more like for a timeline issue. So as interdependent, all those processes are like one big bubble that you can work in parallel, and they are all connected within themselves, if that makes sense. It is to simplify the linkage within a bubble that is just a group of elements that are going to be kind of standalone by themselves. Yes. Does that make sense?
I think so. Do we want to leave it as a contextual analysis?
Yeah, I like it. I like how it looks, and it also allows like that explanation that why you could have a bubble with a bunch of linkage internally and another you don't need to. Again, flexibility, and this has to be what talks to you, what makes sense to you, because if it makes sense to you, it most likely it will make sense for the project, for the purpose. You have to understand it, and
I think as long as it makes sense in some way, you're able to articulate how that makes sense to you. It might be that it makes sense to the rest of the group, or not. But I think being able to at least articulate some reasoning behind the grouping of these ideas really helps then have a starting point for how you move forward. Okay, so existing sentences, what others have done, similar methods. Identification of needs.
And this is something I learned recently, or I read recently, this quote that is, if you want to understand something, explain it. Because when you're trying to explain it to somebody else, it's because you understand it. And sometimes we, because of pressures or time pressures or group pressures, peer pressures, sometimes we say, yeah, I understand, yeah, and then you really do not capture or grasp the purpose of what is being done. So that's what asking questions, as I mentioned at the beginning, more questions, more ideas, more understanding. So ask questions and ensure that you understand why you are putting these interconnections as they are, why you are grouping these categories as you are. And we could group something and then change it, because when we were going segregating more, this doesn't make sense. So ensure that you understand it and it works for you. If you were doing this by yourself, you probably would come up with different categories with different linkages, but it is important because you are the one that are going to run the project. So keep that as your north.
Decided to move those loose ones
right
back over there. Okay.
So let's go to see if we can start continuing the linkage.
Okay, so the buy-in, are we okay with that being
yes
the primary input for group dynamics?
Mm-hmm. And
then,
also that will inform all the operations.
Okay, what do we have on the right that we have?
On the right, we have this is like a strategy, how we want to do the blueprint. Those three is like sort of a choice or possibilities of the product, the final product. If it's a map, it is a decision, how we are going to get there, right?
So what are we thinking from, is there a connection from group logistics or group operations? Like what happens after this last large blue bubble that we have?
So you have there all the processes. I think you're going to build the processes based on the dynamics of your group, and that could be an output both of the logistics I think that we need another buying there, and I don't know if it's,
what do you mean?
Well, we are doing this group logistics, I'm thinking.
Because I was thinking we have the coordinating bubble that was floating over there.
In blue?
In blue.
Yeah, it was
missing
something. Yeah, it would be missing something because the operations is just the operations. Okay, you take all that information.
We also have the knowledge transfer sharing, which is another one that was floating around. I think that could go inside operations. How the group is going to, because you have done an assessment of everyone's skills or what skills are needed within the group to do whatever the group is organizing around.
Mm-hmm.
You have a skills bank. And part of what would be beneficial is to figure out a way where these skills are, and the knowledge that exists in the group doesn't just exist within the people that currently has it, but there is a method to share and transfer that knowledge.
Correct.
So I think that could possibly go inside this bubble. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And I think from here, there needs to be maybe blueprint as a decision tree, perhaps. So like figuring out how to output all of these operations into
I think would be like
a
an output.
decision-making process.
Yeah, like right. I like that.
Okay. We still have these like floaters over here. I think because the map, maybe we can just this bubble, because like those were just essentially different ideas of 3, 4, board game,
Map. Yeah, and you may very well want to have all of them, right? But these were ideas that came from the brainstorming and say, oh, it could be a map or it could be just a board game. We have done some mappings that are like board games that are pretty cool. Correct. That's what so you have that, maybe you want to have that like a decision, the blueprint before.
Well, I was thinking it can be something like that, where it was like, what we want to create is something visual, and that might be a decision tree, it might be a board game, it might be a map. And that is a way, one of the things that we're trying to do is figure out how we capture the dynamics of the group, the logistics that have been created, not necessarily as extensive, dense documentation, but as a visual that becomes a tool for actually working together and making decisions of the group and actually advancing in that shared motivation or shared reason for which this group is organizing around.
Right, and communicating to others.
Exactly.
Yes, and that coordinating, I don't know, that it could very well be part of the operations as a, like all the elements, all the process, all the goes to a coordination. Yes.
I don't know where to put it.
I would put it in operations, and maybe having that everything goes coordinating after you have all that logistics, then you go to, but it's part of the operations.
But I'm thinking not of as coordinating as a process, but coordinating as, okay, now we have this blueprint and we're coordinating the group. So that's why I'm seeing it more as yes, there might be definitely coordinating processes inside the group logistics operations bubble, but I'm seeing it more as, okay, now that we have this and we have this blueprint and we have this map, now we need to coordinate the group for this effect. So I don't know if maybe after where I have it right now. What do you think?
No.
We can leave it floating there for now, as we think about it.
Because I would like the output is the blueprint, because that's our goal. So it could be like.
But that may be for our yeah.
Yeah.
I think we can leave it. Let's not get caught up on it.
Okay, let's go to the purple. There are a lot of things there, and we call purple the core values and foundations. And the core values and foundations are all predecessors to our blueprint in some way.
Because these are the foundation of how we are operating as we're trying to create this blueprint. This doesn't necessarily mean, I mean, this could translate in what the blueprint itself is going to become. Right. But now we're going back, not in the application of the blueprint, which was kind of what we were thinking about when we were doing blue, but going back to blueprint development. So kind of the orange, this process that we're embarking on right now. So where do we see that fitting?
I see it fitting as an input to the. Yeah, I see what you're saying, but this is where it gets a little bit confusing, because to build, so those core values and foundations are, let's see how I have a drawing here that And I did a linkage once. Okay, so it goes, I think it does have to do with the blue because it will inform somehow.
Well, I think it's because it's how we're viewing it, but we can't impose values onto different groups. The idea is like, this is how we're going to approach it. This is what we're considering in order to develop this blueprint in a way that's as accessible and applicable to as many groups as possible. But we're not going to, it's impossible to require groups who are then applying this blueprint to focus on accessibility or focus on inclusion, or because it's beyond the scope of our ability. So I think definitely maybe part of the group logistics and operations could be having a set of the code of conduct or a set of values in order to have the group determine what those are for themselves. So it could be kind of like a purple, all-encompassing bubble that goes into the blue. But I think for ourselves, I think we need to think of how we're thinking about these as we're creating the blueprint. How are we applying these different foundational concepts into creating a blueprint that enables the making of a safe space or positive collaboration or trust building, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's what I see, that regardless of, we are not imposing, but if we have those prompts, right, like it's part of the dynamics, or
maybe value alignment is, do you think it would be part of group dynamics, or maybe somewhere in the middle?
Hold on. It would not be logistic. It would be,
I think, between group dynamics, and because it's not, yeah, maybe it's like asset mapping. Also, there's a process of value alignment.
Yeah, because I see it, regardless of, this is the portion that will help us for the blueprint. In the blueprint itself, that category informs your dynamics too. So all those elements that are there, that is the value, the core values and foundation. Actually, that's part of, informs the shared reality. I mean, because how do you have a shared reality? You can have many of those elements.
But not necessarily. You can have a shared reality around the fact that this group all lives in the same building. And you can't force the initiation of that process of gathering in everyone having the same values, or like not everyone's going to trust each other necessarily. So that's why I'm saying I think it needs to be built into the blueprint that, for example, I put the value alignment bubble in here. There has to be some sort of value alignment that allows this group to then create some sort of like shared work within the logistics and operations. But I don't think it can be a predecessor.
Okay, but would you agree that the other items that we have there as value, core values and foundation, they have to be part, regardless of what is the shared reality, they have to be part of the blueprint. Because if there's no trust between the members, then why you want to be part of that group, of that community, right? Maybe, yeah, and I see what you're saying about with the example. The example was pretty good, like the building, and not everybody needs to trust each other, but
not everyone needs to trust each other initially to gather, but trust building can be part of. That's why I have value alignment as a part of those dynamics. And then from here, we can, that's what I'm saying, like these purple, I feel like it helps us inform a step of the blueprint that we can include, which is, you know, it can be trust building, it can be
making space,
you know, making space, or making a, yeah.
So I don't know if it's too simple from my mind at this moment. I will grab them all, put them in a big purple bubble for now, and put it like it has to be back and forth with the group dynamics. It's bi-directional, I think. And it's separated color because we said that the blue, it is the blueprint.
Yeah, I want to keep them outside of the blue area because I want, as purple, I want to keep them for us and how we're designing the blueprint. Like, how are we considering inclusion when we're designing this blueprint? How are we considering accessibility when we're designing this blueprint? Because essentially we want to inject these purple bubbles into the design that we're creating. So I think that's where it still can be one big purple bubble, but I don't want to include it in kind of the flow of blue. I wanna have it like before.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
But before the step one of blue, or before being step one, the first bubble to the left?
I think like a parallel process. So because we're designing this blueprint, it means that we're going to design a process for contextual analysis. It means that we're going to design what like figuring out the group dynamics is. It means we're going to figure out how you can determine the logistics and the operations. So I think at each of those spots, we can have the parallel line of how we're essentially plugging in these different
so the
foundation.
So if you bring them all like to the bottom, like below the blue, right? And it's gonna happen the same with the gray, which are the barriers. And this is something that I was picturing in my head. Like I have, like, you know, from orange we go to blue, right? We're developing, the orange is developing, and the blue is the deliverable. And I saw, you know, the green and the yellow are very, very well linked to the orange, right? Because those are things that we need to understand. But the gray and the purple are like feeding somehow that line between the orange and the blue.
I want to create it in the middle.
You want to bring it in the center or below?
No, I think here, because I want to figure out how we can plug them in. At what point kind of these different ones can come in. So I'm thinking inclusion towards the beginning. We need to figure out how we're including different groups, or like different people in this shared process. So one thing I usually do before I figure out the connections is kind of figure out some sensical sequence of the category.
So same with accessibility, you think?
Perhaps. I think maybe collaboration would be closer to
the operations.
part of the group dynamics is trying to figure out how we're making space for the different groups. Then understanding of diversity as well. Different people have different realities, and we're all very complex individuals. So having that understanding and being able to make space for people and help understand the group dynamics best. Let's see. I think early on there needs to be some understanding of what's non-negotiable. Maybe that's part of the buy-in process.
Like here?
Yeah, something like that. Maybe emotional intelligence is something that can be like developed.
Yeah, some of those are like kind of process-wise, so it would be like parallel to process, like mutual aid, collaboration.
Yeah, I see group dynamics as we're learning about the group, and then group logistics as now we're working as a group.
Correct.
So now I'm thinking trust and safe spaces.
Interconnections.
Global interconnection, but global interconnection feels, it's not necessarily always present, so that one feels a bit separate for now. I'm gonna put it over there for now. Emotional intelligence, collaboration, and mutual aid. I see it as part of the result.
Once that you have the blueprint. Like
yeah,
say,
like that is one thing that we're incorporating into that.
So maybe that would be like an overall bubble, like light purple, all together.
Which one?
For the ones that you have on top of the blues.
Well, I was actually thinking it could be part of
the contextual analysis.
Well, part of these big bubbles, that there can be
sure.
We can make room for these within them. Like shared understanding, for example, could be part of I don't know if that's too early, but because we need to figure out these like connections as well. And like I said, I don't know if we wanted to put them in the blue or keep them as a separate.
I would keep them separate, and that's what I was thinking. And for example, in inclusion, accessibility, understanding of diversity, those for me it is like it represents like a group of things that are connected one to another, like we did in these blues that are not linkage, and you can have like overall light purple. With all this inside informing.
And what would you blue? What would you name that?
Actually, I would call it making space, because the inclusion, accessibility, understanding of diversity is to make space for everybody. So if it makes sense, we can call it that way, and. How about humility? Do you see it would be more like with like trust, or because just to operate, or in the making space. It could be either. I don't know.
I think we need some humility in order to be able to make space
Okay.
for others.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put them in there. So maybe shared understanding, maybe this green one goes into shared understanding, and then that goes into
Right.
something like
Yes.
that. I don't love this connection from the orange, what others have done, to the contextual analysis.
I think it's because we have inside the contextual analysis what others have done.
Well,
I
and it's
think-
also because we're trying to inform it by what we do during the blueprint development.
Right.
So I think what we're trying to do with the purple, but it's confusing me a bit. Okay, so making space. Do you think that would be a predecessor, like this one? Connect from blueprint application into that. What do you think?
Yes. And from that, I think it would be towards group dynamics.
I think it needs to come back to the contextual
Do you
analysis,
think
though.
so?
Let's see. No, I guess it doesn't have to be.
I don't think so, because the contextual analysis, you're going to see what is out there. And the making space is not. It's something that you could have information in the contextual analysis, but it's additional information.
Well, one of the reasons I was thinking of connecting it to contextual analysis is particularly for the identification of needs, because I think if we don't have that inclusive lens or that accessibility lens, we might not realize that the needs that we're identifying might be really narrow, and they don't take in everyone's reality.
Yeah, but then it would be to that particular bubble, not to the overall contextual analysis.
Yeah,
Does
that's
that make
fair.
sense? Yeah.
Can we go through these connections in here, because we made them before we had the contextual analysis bubble, and I think we can simplify them a little bit. So from the start of the blueprint application, we go into identification of needs, but could we just go into contextual analysis specifically?
Yeah, but the contextual analysis starts with something within that was.
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Maybe if you put that at the beginning, like on the next to the arrow, and then move the existing systems and network, and then you can. And I will bring, just for the drawing purposes,
Framework.
I will bring the making space to the left of the arrow, the whole thing. Okay. You know where I'm going, right? So, really want to group it. And then from that, you go to the identification of needs.
I don't think this needs to be from identification of needs. I think the buy-in can come from.
Right, correct, from the whole thing.
Yeah, which means this doesn't need.
So this one, maybe if you bring that arrow from here, from in the center, correct.
Needs. And then from making space to identification of needs specifically. Identification of needs, structures. What others have done. What do you think
Good.
for now?
Mm-hmm. So it's 11:57. We have 3 minutes, and I don't know if you want to have like this group that we have on top of the group logistics and operations. It would be something similar, I think.
I think maybe that one can be value alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe that can be the big bubble,
Right.
and that
And-
work can be done as part of working together.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Or it can be
It will.
a process from
It will be informed,
maybe like that,
and that it will inform the operations. Yes.
and then maybe remove that one.
Yep.
Because then once you have the dynamics, you need to do you can do a process of alignment
Yep.
before you're
Yep.
able to work together. Maybe the non-negotiables go
Yeah, it will be part of the value alignment, right?
part of that process. I love this process because every time we start, I think that I have no idea where it's going. And then we're always able to make
Yeah, and it is like, okay, I didn't know, right? It's just like it makes sense. It comes to light.
precisely. Okay. So we're at the end of the hour, so we're going to pause our process for now. We will continue next Monday, May 18th at 11 a.m. Netherlands time, same place. As always, we offer support, so anyone looking for guidance with their specific idea, their project, or strategy, we offer office hours every week. The link to sign up is in the description. And follow us on our LinkedIn pages to stay up to date on any ipsicafé special event or development that we have over the next few months. And do you have anything to add, Lizzie?
No, thank you very much for joining.
All right. Well, everyone, get some rest y hasta la próxima.
Ciao.
Ciao.